Welcome to the Shergroup podcast, where we share ideas on how to help businesses grow and prosper in the online world. Join host, Chief Shergroupie, Claire Sandbrook, as she discusses her digital journey and how Shergroup is helping thousands to keep their business flowing and growing. Here on the Shergroupie podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Shergroup on the Sofa. I hope wherever you are in the world today, you're in a good place and the sun is shining, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere. And today I'm delighted to welcome my guest, John Birkett, who has been a customer of Shergroup and a big supporter of Shergroup. But before we get into his interview, as I always do on the show, I'd just like to give a shout out to my number one fan and Shergroup's number one fan, Mr. Ross Saunders, who is in Norwich, England today. So, hey, Rossi, hope you're in a good place. I think John wants to say hello.
Yeah, happy early birthday, Ross, and hope you enjoy that football game on Saturday.
I told him you're a big Norwich City fan, Ross. So, happy 40th. For Saturday. Okay? All right. Well, John, it's an absolute pleasure to see you on Shergroup on the Sofa today. And thank you for all the support you've given to Shergroup over its development in the US. It's terrific to have someone like you rooting for the company. How did you get your start in security?
Wow. Let me see. It's been almost 2 decades since my start in security. So I actually started in healthcare security as an officer right out of high school. So I joined the team back then and quickly excelled into leadership roles. And ultimately, about 3 years ago, I was a regional leader for Advent Health. So I had 3 hospitals at the time.
Yes. I remember, and we worked through the COVID crisis, and that was a challenge, wasn't it, for everybody? It was a challenge for the whole planet, but it was a challenge for every employer in Florida and certainly the world. I mean, I think every business on the planet was affected by COVID. Probably the first time in the history of the human race that we've all had to shut down or change operations to cope with that emergency, and particularly so in a healthcare setting. I know you guys were under the cosh. What do you miss about security? Do you miss that? Do you miss that sort of, that drama?
I do. I miss the fires. I miss the critical thinking, having to make split-second decisions. But you know what I miss the most? I miss the team, right? So I had a lot of, team members that had worked with me my whole career, right? And a lot of them moved with me from site to site and from campus to campus. And so I had built that team around me that it's so integral, not only in healthcare, but in all industries, that you have a team to get those performance goals. So, if I were to narrow it down to the one thing that I miss the most is the team. And I'm building that again now in my new venture here. And I know we're well on the way here, but after almost 20 years in the healthcare environment, I can honestly say it was the team.
Well, I can see from your home office there, your certifications behind you, and obviously very, very accomplished in security. But I think what is interesting about you is that you're using that colossal experience now in a whole new ballgame, aren't you? So let's get into that, because what have you changed from? You've gone from security operations into something very, very fancy. So tell us about what you're up to these days.
Definitely. So I've made the transition over to I guess you could call it the vendor world, right? I've jumped over the fence, and I still get to do a lot of the aspects of my last job that I loved. So, risk assessment, site surveys, but I just get to do it for a lot more customers, a lot more a lot more teammates there. And I'm specializing in weapons detection, specifically concealed weapons screening at entryways. And a lot of the work that we do is in healthcare. So obviously my experience on the healthcare side has been beneficial, has been very beneficial. And, understanding how technology is laid out and how we can best integrate with that existing technology as well. So there's a lot of overlap there.
I think this is such a vital part of the security industry here in America. I come from a country where we have weapons, of course we do in the UK, and that's probably on the increase. And we can talk about, knives and guns, because for our audience outside of America, this is an interesting conversation, how Americans are tackling the clearly obvious problems they have in controlling something that is in the Constitution, so to be able to carry a gun, which again, many people don't understand that, but that's all part of your history and your culture as a country. But then how are you, as really, the forward thinkers on the planet, how are you tackling this problem? And, we both have in our network Eric Clay. I know he's a buddy of yours, and he is flagging up on his LinkedIn the incidences of violence in the healthcare situations, isn't he? And it's shocking what people are doing. We've had something similar in the UK just recently, and actually Eric reports on that as well. He's somewhere else in the world. So the people that are trying to look after us and take care of us when we're sick, to have them attacked and subject to sort of violence is one vertical that we can help with that. So this area of weapons detection. Now, your company that you're with now is Athena.
That's correct.
And we'll give all the links in the show notes later to Athena's social media, YouTube, which I think is really important. But how is the solution benefiting security teams and a client's organization as a whole?
So that's a big question. So I'm going to break it down, right?
Sure.
There's multiple issues that we're seeing across the market, but specifically in healthcare, right? I mean, one of the main issues is the retention of staff, right? So how are healthcare organizations better retaining their staff and keeping them on board rather than having them, start travel nursing or and it's specifically on the nursing side as well, but it's not just nursing. It's EVS, it's security, it's any number of departments there. But how are you retaining that staff, right? So for us, to show a team member that you care about them, to show that you are ensuring a safe environment for that team member, that's where we come in. So our solution is not it's not a corrections looking device. It does not look like doesn't look like you're going into a prison. It's very visually appealing, and yet it has the high screening capability of that corrections level institute, if you'd like. In our typical deployments, we're looking for 100% of firearms, and we accurately screen for 100% of firearms, as well as larger knives is our typical threat target. So for the retention piece, to be able to show a team member that you care about their safety, that they feel safe to come to work, that's huge. So that's one of the issues that we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
The other issue is obviously the workplace violence concern, right? So you want to ensure that those threat targets, that guns and knives are not entering your facility, and we are the best suited to do that because we have the best plane of detection for those threats, as well as paired with the software to document those items as well. So within the specifically for the threat detection, you have the capability of tracking individual items as far as guns, knives. Some facilities want to track vapes. So if they want to keep vapes out of their facility as well, obviously that's a hot topic, and it has been for the last few years. So I guess you could say it's a multi-pronged approach to be able to ensure safety at those entryways and making sure those items don't get in the first place.
Yes, and I'm sure that as your customers, which are probably some of my customers, they have a zero tolerance to any weapon of any description being on their premises. On their property, zero tolerance to that. But then, of course, it's one thing to have it in a policy. It's another thing to actually tackle it and to be able to have a clear process around how that's going to be handled. So I really, I think that this software that you're working in now is a game changer for client premises where, yes, they want a security team, and Shergroup supplies security officers and security canines. But as you've just said, the security themselves want to be, protected from shall I say, the nutcase, with a rifle or a semi-automatic weapon or a knife. So we don't want those people even getting into the building.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And you hit the nail on the head, right? So the policies and procedures is really the first step, right? Yeah. And then how do you go about enforcing those things? And I should say that, our solution is not, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? You have to have multiple layers, layers like an onion, right? So security is all about layers and redundancy. So we are a piece of that overall security program, right? And, our software gives security directors the capability of making those critical decisions based off the data that we provide as well. So, but like I said, it's, we're not the end all be all for your whole security program. There has to be multiple layers and redundancy for that piece, but we're here to help where we can, right?
So as you walk up to a facility that has your system installed, it's going to be, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be intimidating to a visitor or a worker coming into that building. When we met for coffee a few weeks ago, I was talking to you about Disney. I know you won't mind me mentioning Disney, although they use a different product to yours, but you need to get in at Disney, John. But the point is that a lot of people who are watching this show will have been to Disney and have been to that system that you walk up to and it screens you as you walk through. And I think that's what you're advocating is systems don't need to be scary and almost like airport scanners. I mean, but many people have been to airports and have been scanned now. I mean, it is a way of life, isn't it? The public are accepting of these measures to keep them safe, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a level of expectation at this point. And more often than not, we get people that will say, thank you for what you're doing, and they understand the process. Yes. And occasionally you'll have a person that is unruly about it, but that's, they're an outlier, right? I mean, overall majority of people expect that. And it's funny that you mentioned Disney. So we partner with the industry leader in weapons detection, CHEA, for the majority of our hardware, and Disney actually uses the CHEA open gates at their for their events, for their mobile applications, because the CHEA open gate is the best mobile weapons detection solution on the market, right? So it's funny that you mentioned Disney, because yes, they use Evolve at their main gate, but they use the open gate at their VIP entrances and their VIP events. So
yes. But Athena, when somebody is buying from you, it's the Athena product that they're going to see and engage with, is it? Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. So we provide all the software, analytics, data, dashboard, facial recognition. There's a whole feature set that's built in to our software that is paired with the CHEA open gate currently.
Now, I'm just talking as a visitor. I'm not talking as a security professional at the moment, but just for the benefit of my audience. When you talk about analytics, is the system going to be able to tell you how many guns people have tried to smuggle through the system in the last week, month, year. You're going to get that kind of analytical information that managers can go, okay, well, you need to add in those different layers and different aspects of our security plan to control this. Is that what the analytics are going to start telling security managers and HR managers?
That's exactly right. So there's a whole set of metrics and data that are included in our software. Volume by hour, total number of transits, the items that are coming through. Yes. With the facial recognition, you get the who that's coming through. So we're accomplishing the who and the what at your entryway, right? But right. Really, the important piece behind the metrics, right? With these systems, the cost of the hardware doesn't measure up to the cost of the labor to run the system, right? So it's quite a bit more to run the system than it is to purchase the system, right? So what you want as a security director is the least amount of labor needed to run the system, yes, paired with the highest screening capability, right? So our software gives you the decision-making capability with our metrics to better be able to justify your labor, right? So if you have X amount of volume coming through an entryway by hour, right? So you're able to track and trend your typical average transits. Yeah. You're better able to justify your labor and know that you have the ample amount of coverage at that entryway. And on the same token, you don't have too much coverage at that entryway because you don't want to overspend on the labor where you don't need to, right? So if if you know that there's a time of day where your volume, call it 3 o'clock in the morning, where your volume is substantially lower than 10 o'clock in the morning, then you don't need 2 officers to run the system. You can run it with 1, or even, there's a capability of a semi-automatic entry because our software integrates with most access control and video management. You have the capability of integrating with access control, and upon detection of a threat, the access control door to remain locked, right? So you can have what's called a semi-automatic entry at those entrances where you don't have a substantial volume, right? So think employee entrances, places like that.
I think that's really interesting because, of course, there is the implementation system, and you might think that this system is a catch-all and therefore you don't need security officers anymore, but of course you do. And of course, I'll just use the example of Disney because that's one that many, many people have seen. Disney have created their own police force in terms of their security team. They even look a bit like Officer Dibble Top Cat, with their helmets and everything. But they've got plenty of security officers around, which I think is your point, because they're busy throughout their opening hours. And I see the value of that. And I see the value of security officers having new skills of being able to handle the public or their visitor community, when one of these situations presents, because that's a level of, they're not police officers, so that's a level of tact and diplomacy and professionalism that they bring to the job, isn't it? Putting somebody to the side while they check out what it is that the system has flagged.
Exactly, and very much so. And I see that as it's not so much the future of security; it's the current state of security. Security officers are, there's a need for them to be technologically savvy, right? Because, you're running systems like this, you're running access control systems, you're running video management systems, you're running weapons detection, right? So there's an element of technology that is built into security now, right? So you're seeing that more and more in the market with the need of, just like I said, technology savvy security officers, right? So it's not so much the way of the future, it's now.
It's now. And does your system, do you provide security training for the operatives?
Very much so. All of our deployments include training videos. When we do a full deployment at a customer site, we train the whole security team on how to run the system, as well as proper divestment procedures, items to look for, ways to clear the person and clear the bag. And that's really, that's come from industry best practices over years of experience in the market to be able to, best train those team members.
And I guess there's a point really. I mean, I was actually going to flying up to Chicago last week, so I went to airport security, and I got flagged as something on me was setting an alarm. So I got the pat down. Does your system, which I don't really enjoy that. I mean, who does? It's part of the process. Of course, I understand it, but does your system kind of reduce the need to touch the visitor community? Because I think that's the scary bit about these types of the increasing need to have systems, but also we don't really want to be touched if we can help it. Does that make sense?
Oh, exactly right. Exactly right. So, and what that leads back to is, nuisance alarm rate, right? And what it ultimately leads back to is labor as well. So if you have a high nuisance alarm rate, so your system is alerting on, keys, phones, belt buckles, all those types of, non-threat target items, then you're going to have a higher nuisance alarm rate because the system will be alerting on those items that aren't threats, right? So, and obviously we call them nuisance alarms because they're a nuisance, right? So what you want to know as a security director is that the system is alerting on threat targets and not those nuisance alarms, right? So our system has the capability of discriminating against those everyday items, phones, keys, belt buckles, money clips, any of those items that a traditional walkthrough would alert on that you would have to, self-divest into a gray bucket on the table there.
Yeah.
And you can just walk through and it will accurately detect a threat as you walk through the portal.
Yes.
So it's important that your nuisance alarm rate is low. That's what it comes down to, because if your nuisance alarm rate is low, your labor usage is lower as well, because the more involvement security has to have, not only is the customer more, there's more of an invasion of privacy on the customer because you're having to pat them down or wand them, right? I mean, that's what, there's quite a few out there as far as wanding.
Yeah.
But you want to keep that nuisance alarm rate low so there's less involvement from that perspective.
Yes. The image of Arnold Schwarzenegger walking through that security scanner on Total Recall just came into my mind.
Oh, my goodness. Yep.
I guess we're getting more into that kind of, well, as you said, what might be viewed as science fiction is actually hitting us now, which is so good to hear. And what I'm particularly interested in, and Shergroup Security is going down this route in the States now, which I'm delighted about, because I want to do something about it, like we all do, is school security and protecting students and children in these environments with these terrible tragedies that we're seeing. How does your system kind of address that problem? Because
So first of all, I want to say that was one of the main reasons why Athena was founded, because both of our founders, Lisa and Chris, have children, and they started the company because they saw the need for that and wanted to ensure kids' safety in the education system, right? So, and I have a 4-year-old daughter as well, so she's in pre-K now, going to kindergarten next year, and it scares me to death. I actually did a risk assessment at her pre-K, and I called the headmaster and I said, "Hey, let me do a complimentary risk assessment just to kind of put some of my fears at ease," right? And there was some discrepancy. There was some non-conformities, I guess you could say, and they were able to fix them rather quickly. Most notably, a disheveled fence in the back that they noted there was vagrants that were cutting through the property. So that was one of the things that we found. But that's why it's so important to provide site surveys and risk assessments for those facilities, because as I said before, weapons detection isn't the end all be all, right? It's not the cure all for all the problems in the industry, right? There's you can't. I like to say it like this: if you're crawling, you're not going to go straight to running, right? There's a lot of things to put in place prior to weapons detection, and a lot of the times when we come onto a customer site and we're doing a site survey, there's a lot of things to fix before we can even consider weapons detection, right?
Yeah.
But once the security team is to that point, we're able to best implement those policies and procedures. And like I said before, that really comes back to industry best practice and experience in the market on, what's the sense in recreating the wheel. We've already done it with other customers. Use the same policies and procedures, especially if it's within the same industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And specifically schools, we do quite a bit of work in schools, quite a bit of work in K-12 private schools, and it is definitely a huge benefit as long as you have a team to run it, right? I mean, it comes back to whether you're using SROs to run those devices or security teams. But it just comes back to having the capability of running it. You can't. It's not an easy bake oven. You can't set it and forget it.
No. It's something that's got to be constantly watched and managed and nurtured. And I guess, and you know what I'm going to say, it also comes down to funding.
Yes.
I mean, something like your system, in the great United States. Can't we find some budget for these schools to have this kind of system implemented from a federal level rather than a state or local level? Because but there's many schools. I think somebody told me there's like 130 or 1,000 schools, in the United States. It's a big number.
Sounds about right.
But that said, the system, as you develop it, I'm sure you'll be able to help customers more with their implementation and their management of that system, which will, address a very important. But there are so many verticals you can go into. Obviously, you've got healthcare, which we've started talking about. I'm taking you down this track with schools because I think people will be interested on, well, how can we protect children in school? And this, as you say, is part of the security plan for schools. But there's airports. And there's the shopping malls, and there's all sorts of areas where this system can help.
Yeah. Manufacturing and casino are the other, two other big industries for us as well.
Okay.
Manufacturing and casinos.
So in terms of casinos, have you got anything in Vegas or Atlanta or any of the big casinos?
We do. We've got a handful in Atlantic City, a handful in Vegas.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So I guess I was going to ask you kind of a larger question, which was, do you think that your system is crucial to a security plan? I think you've answered that. That really, how can you have a security plan without that kind of tech?
Exactly.
For some of the people that we've been talking, for some of the organisations we've been talking about, I find the budget, lose some administration, and find the budget to put this system in some of your your management overhead or your admin overhead, or something that's not really adding what I would call real value to your business and your organisation.
Exactly, and there's a lot of opportunity out there for grant funding, specifically for schools as well.
Yes,
and we can help with that as well. We've got a team that helps us with that process.
What, to kind of like locate the grant and then facilitate it and bring it?
Yep. And some of it, some of the grants are a match. The school puts up X amount of dollars and they match that dollar, or others are just a full on cover. So, it just depends on kind of what you're applying for.
So, I mean, when you get a lead, somebody, this must be new for you, being in the vendor environment, talking to customers, or you're absolutely acing it in terms of your credibility as a security professional, and then just taking the customer through this opportunity to change and improve their security. What are those operational considerations? If you came to me and said, right, well, I think this is what we can do, I mean, you'd have my undivided attention, John. I can tell you that now. So what is it that you're going to talk to a customer about in terms of operational considerations?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for that, Claire. guess for me, I see my job as more education than anything else, right? Just kind of educating the person on industry best practices and where we can help in that process, and what pieces that we can really escalate, right? So I don't view myself as a salesman, right? I mean, that's just a byproduct of what I do, but it's more so a consultative experience than anything else, right?
So, yeah, it's got to be, hasn't it? It's got to be that.
It has to.
People they'll evaluate what you're saying, and the sincerity and the appropriateness of the system will almost sell itself.
Yeah, and I can honestly say, as I alluded to before, there's been situations where I can't recommend weapons detection to a customer, right? Yeah. I'm not the type to push our solution on someone that can't manage it, right? And that's something that we determine early on whether or not it's a fit in the first place. There's, as I noted before, there's a lot of things that you can do before that that are quite honestly cheaper, right? So a lot of it, crime prevention through environmental design, it's free, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do that can harden your entryways that literally cost the time of the landscaping technician. And we cover that in our site surveys and our risk assessments. So there's a lot of things you can do that are quite honestly free. So
I think that's really good advice in terms of doing what you can. But I love the fact that you're giving these risk assessments in a consultative capacity. Is there a cost to that, just for people listening? Is there a cost to that consultative process, or is that something that's complementary in the initial stages, with a bit of both?
So I'm down in Orlando, right? So as long as, if it's a drive for me, I don't typically charge. If there's some travel associated, I would probably just ask for the travel to be covered. But like I said, if it's local to me, like I said, obviously I did my daughter's school, right? Because I have a vested interest at that in that setting. But it's also local. So I was able to do that in a day, and I drove over and, dropped her off and then did the site survey. So it really just depends on the customer, depends on the location. But we also have, consultants like me across the country. So if it's not me, it could be someone else.
Of course. And of course, there's always the opportunity, as we're doing today, to talk to a customer on Zoom and, even look at a customer site from aerial and street maps, and start to build up a picture of what the customer needs. So I think it's, I think Athena is, and I'm so glad to hear the backstory of how your company was set up. And I think all of us as parents, that's there for the grace of God go I. We want our children to be safe at school and college, and
very much so.
That's a great driver for what you're doing, as opposed to somebody that perhaps is in it to develop a product. It's got the company's got a real gravitas in terms of its mission. So I see the value of Athena, and as you were even telling me about it a few weeks ago, I love the idea of it. What about our security officers? I mean, I've got officers under my wing. You've built teams of officers. What's your advice for the next generation of security officers? And young people coming into security now. What would you say to them?
So, looking back at my career, there's been a handful of times, probably more than a handful, that, there's been roadblocks, right? There's always storms, right? And then there'll be, calms before the storm, calm after the storm. But I guess if I were to say, one word to the oncoming generation, or even the ones that are, currently in the market, right? Persistency. Be persistent. And I guess if I were to expand on that, be consistent as well, right? So persistency and consistency. So you you keep pushing until, your desired outcome is achieved, right? And then you keep pushing after that as well. This isn't the industry to relax. This isn't the industry to sit back and put your feet up and watch the CCTV all day. That's not where we're at anymore. It may have been, 20, 25 years ago, but we're not there anymore. And as I said before, you have to be technologically savvy, right? So taking it upon yourself to learn those aspects of the security program, take it upon yourself to make yourself as, valuable to the program as possible by learning those aspects. So, and that's so important. If you're wanting to excel within this industry, you have to do that. You have to look at it as the long game and don't look at it as the short-term incentives, because, if you start looking at it and saying, oh, I'm going to get this certification because I'm getting a quarter more an hour, that's not what we're here for. You're here to learn, you're here to better yourself and make yourself more valuable. So.
Yes. Security has a fairly simple entry level D license training, or G license if you're armed. But I think that you can use that. So let's say you're not the most academic person and maybe you don't want to go to college, you're happy, you come out of high school and you want to enter the job market, you can get your D license. Mm-hmm. And really it's a passport into a system and you can build up your certifications, and the more certifications you have, the better it looks on the resume. I see a lot of resumes for security officers and there's just not a lot on there. But if somebody's coming from the police or the military, then obviously that's a huge tick in the box. But if you're coming from high school or maybe college into security, like John said, I think you've got to, like you said, you've got to kind of build up your certifications, and something like this system is a weapons detection, understanding that is a great thing to have on your resume.
Well, it's funny you say that, because we actually have certification levels built into our solution as well. So that's actually, yep, we do. Yep. And that covers everything from, divestment procedures all the way up to, documentation, incident reporting, so we have a whole set of certifications built into our software as well for our customers.
So as a customer takes the system, then you help them train up their team.
Exactly. Yep. Level 1, 2, 3. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a great advantage, isn't it? And also for security officers, knowing that you are going to be trained and certified on the system, you're going to get that certification. What a tremendous thing to do. If you're going to be security, let's secure. And I think that's interesting. And learning the system and the nuances of the system, that's a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. So that's good to hear. Because otherwise, you could just think, well, it's just something you buy out of the box, and you just put it on the site, and it, like you said, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
For people who don't know what weapons detection means, it's just a whole different aspect of security and the security plan on site. So I'm really pleased to hear that Athena are investing in that.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we're not in the business of, like I said before, setting and forgetting. We're in the business of building partnerships, right? So, and partnerships for the long haul. So when we deploy at a customer site, that's oftentimes just the beginning of the relationship, right? We're expanding on that relationship. We're training the officers. We're working on policies and procedures. So there's a lot of things in place to best be able to do that.
Okay. Well, I told you I was a fan when I saw you, and I wanted you to get in at Disney. Maybe you're still working on that. How do people get into it? John, there is so many people that could take this system. How do they get in touch with you? How do they start that conversation?
Well, go to athenasecurity.com, I'm on LinkedIn specifically. Athena Security is on LinkedIn as well. And we actually have a YouTube channel. We've got a lot of customer testimonials on there, training videos.
Yes.
So if there's anyone that's interested in seeing the training aspect for, whether you use our solution or not, you can benefit from, different training aspects. So we're on YouTube. But athenasecurity.com is probably a safe bet there. Or my email, johnb@athenasecurity.com.
Okay, well, we're going to put all your social media, email, and YouTube, and LinkedIn into the show notes. So that will be optimized, and you'll be searchable. So if anyone's listening to this and they want to get in touch with John, I've worked with John over the years. Absolutely safe pair of hands. And just as he sounds today, very calm, and I think one of your words was consistent and consistency, and that is what John brings to the table in terms of looking after security operations. So John, thank you so much for guesting today. It's been a fascinating interview. I'm so glad that we did this and that you've brought another aspect to the fore of how the US, the great US, is tackling this problem that the world sees, and we know that you guys want to sort it out, and you've got the tech and the systems to be able to do that. It's so good to hear that. And of course, this tech doesn't just stay in the US, it's available. I'm sure you have opportunities overseas and the UK and further afield. So weapons detection in any part of the world is a growing conversation, and one that we can tackle.
Very much so. Very much so. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the kind words. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. So, well, that's today's interview. And for everyone else, we'll be back with another show, probably another related solution in Shergroup. You can find us at shergroupusa.com for this security type solution. You can find us for other solutions on our platform of Shergroup.com. So take your pick. Shergroup is growing in a number of different ways as we speak. But thank you, John, and thank you to everyone else who's joining in and growing our audience. We appreciate you, and we'll speak soon. Thanks, everyone, and bye, John.
Thanks for listening to the Shergroupie podcast. To join our Shergroupie community, subscribe by going to our website at www.shergroup.com. Keep up with the latest Shergroup news across all our main channels, including YouTube, LinkedIn, and across all social media. Stay connected and begin building more business relationships.